Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video we are talking about summary writing, how to make sense of article once you have read it already and you want to digest, deduce the main point of it, the matter, the subject matter of the article. This skill is essential for several reasons. First, to make sense of the information in general and quickly give the main point, the main idea of the article, especially the newspaper article, which is written with a pretty complex language. The other reason why you need to practice summarizing skills is rendering. In rendering of the text, so just delivering it, taking it from the source language and delivering it to the target language, you basically do the same analytical process. You have to identify the main point and then deliver them in the target language. The same happens actually as you translate or interpret for your client, especially during this technique of whispering. As oral interpreters, you know that sometimes the client can ask you not to deliver word-for-word translation, but rather give the main ideas. So summarizing skills, either oral or written, they are essential for the analytical analysis and for translation of the text. So in this video, I will teach you how to do the critical analysis of the text and then deliver your own version of the text's main points. In the previous video, which I encourage you watching, we discussed a critical analysis of the media text. How to understand the text. What are the things you have to pay specific attention to while reading a newspaper article, whether in a quality paper or popular paper, you still have to pay attention to some things. Please go and watch this video first. But once you have read an article, once you have analyzed it and paid attention to the issues that are all of utmost importance, you have now to get the thoughts together and make a summary. So, the summary is basically a secondary text about the source text, which is a primary text. And it relies not on retelling of the text, but rather on the critical analysis of its conceptual structure, as well as its lingual and multimodal means of expression. So basically, in your summary, I do not want you to give the retelling of the text. That's not a retelling of a fairy tale, but rather the analysis of the text, of its main points, main ideas, concepts, relationships between them, as well as the linguistic means that represent them in the texture. So that's why summary is more than retelling. It is actually an efficient tool of developing media literacy and boosting your grammatical and lexical competence. And there is something that you need to remember first about summary. It is a short, a brief text, so condensed text. And usually we condense it to 1/3 of the original text. So if you have 4 pages, it means you will end up with 1 page or 1 page and a half in the summary text, the summary, the final summary you give. But at the same time, the condensation of the information should not be sacrificed, should not be that drastic. So it should be around 75 or 90% of the information preserved in your summary. So how to do this? How to achieve this? Condensation of the form, but at the same time keeping or preserving so much information. For this purpose, we have to be very critical in our analysis of the content and the form of the text, and we have to use some academic cliches. That's why now we'll proceed to critical writing. Before you listen to the video, you watched the video about critical reading of the text and analysis of the text. Now it's time to discuss critical writing. Here's my case. I decided to read an article on the Times, so that was the Sunday Times, I think, featuring the topic of Amnesty International's Ukraine report, and giving the opinion on this report. You know that was a pretty hot potato topic on media, and lots of media actually commented on this monotonous report by Amnesty International. So first what I did, Of course, I analyzed the article, I read it several times, I analyzed and I identified the keywords and the key expressions that are topical for this article. So there were numerous actually, and that's a good actually criteria. If the article is filled up with good lexicon, with good vocabulary, then you end up with a long list of vocabulary items, or glossary. So in my case, I was lucky to have in abundance all of these keywords and expressions. So what I did with them, as I finished reading and underlying or highlighting the keywords, I grouped them into groups. And that's what I encourage you doing, just to see what are the key topics, key concepts of your text. So I had there Amnesty International and words and expressions relating to Amnesty International. Then I had words that relate to victim, finally to words and expressions featuring war crimes, and something told there said about Ukrainian forces, armed forces. Finally, just to help me build the full picture of it, I decided to make a mind map. So out of my boxes, which were named into categories, I built such a mind map. So here I have Amnesty International, good and bad about this organization. Then I have claims. Amnesty International has claims about Ukrainian military forces concerning war crimes. And yes, Amnesty International's first aim, the initial aim, was to investigate war crimes. But it seems to put a blind eye on the Russian army in this report, and that's what is highlighted in the article. The other part of the story is that the Ukrainian armed forces in this article, they are portrayed as civilians, as protectors of the civilians. And yes, they are rivals, they are fighting a Russian army. And that's absolutely clearly stated. But the article brings a new perspective on the Russian army and its relationship to the war crimes, as well as its horrific, absolutely horrible acts against the Ukrainian civilians. So now I have more or less the picture of the conceptual structure of the article. You can do the same as you read your own article and identify keywords by naming these categories and then trying to link these categories, these boxes, groups of words together. Now, when I proceed to writing my summary, sometimes not only the mind map can be helpful, but a list of questions that I want to answer in my summary. It can be a list of headlines. So I advise my students breaking down the text into thematic groups also and giving names to them. So this is an example of how to make it with the help of questions. So you can just make a list of questions, and then as you write the summary, try to give answers to these questions. Another example, so that was how Russia is conscripting men to fight in Ukraine. Mobilization on zombification on Russia. So that was the article on how the mobilization was happening in Russia, and here again I had yes, that's a pretty comical expression using this Rusisi, so that's one of the neologisms currently adopted in Ukraine. But again, I have here groups of keywords, so partial mobilization, the prospects of conscription to annual drafting periods, and so on. So that's all about mobilization. Then I have big topic here. So the current situation in Ukraine, in Russia. So that was right. So the first one was right. So the impact of mobilization. Then the mobilization itself and the procedures around the mobilization, and finally the mobilized, those who are conscripts or those who have been called to join the army. So these are three big groups and everything is all around these groups. So again, I make a mind map for myself and then get ready to writing my summary. Now it's time to discuss some mistakes that I can make there. So basically, I write a short version of my original text, giving the answers to the questions and showing the connections between these key concepts in my mind map. But as I write my summary, Very often, I am likely, just like you, to make several mistakes. The first mistake. Very often, students try to quote or they use direct formulations from the source text. This is a bad choice, a bad strategy. Why? Because we have different spaces and different time relations in our text. In our article, the time can be, there is a time of the character of the story, of the participant of the story. For example, Peter and Jane. Peter says that Jane is a junkie. Junkie, just drug addict. So this is Peter's time. That's why he's speaking in present tense and he's talking about Jane. So the subject of his sentences is Jane. In your text, in your article, you can find there a narrator, and the narrator will report on Peter's attitude to Jane. Sometimes you will find there even a reporter. According to the narrator of the story, Jane is portrayed as a junkie. So there is a reporter who comments on the narrator on the Peter and Jane together. That in your text, try to be to make one step back. Look at this story from a side. Do not be in the story, and try to analyze what the author does to the text. What are the participants of the text, and try to be reportative. So how would I formulate this sentence? So that would be something like the report or the article on Peter and Jane's relationships considers the accusation of the woman of being a junkie. So that should be here, of accusation of woman of being a junkie or having troublesome drug addiction. Or the article featuring a confusing love story describes the lady's drug addiction. Mind here that I'm using mostly, in most cases, present simple tense. So this is a reportative tense, used for reviews and for summaries, of course. One more thing, do not use pronouns. It follows from the previous rule, actually, because we are not talking about Peter and he. We are actually talking about the narrator, the witness, the police, the politicians. So try to name them, give them abstract nouns, not the pronouns. Yes, sometimes we can use collective nouns or reference nouns like reporter, author, or abstract nouns like the article, the report, the problem, the issue, the question, or reference nouns like the audience, the reader, and so on. But shall I, in my summary, give my own perspective and mention me? Of course not. That's the summary. That's not the rendering. At the end of rendering, you give your opinion, but summary, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make your opinion obvious to us. Good. One more thing. Sometimes students also lack or misuse transition device or these linking words and expressions. So I want you to understand that they are essential in those cases when you have to bridge two ideas and when you need to show these exact logics of connection, relation. So go and use them. But, of course, do not start each sentence with a linking device. If you can show this logic by the syntax, by the way you build your sentences, that's even better. Try to build your sentence in each time in a new way. Do not repeat your syntactic structure, and then you will discover that, well, you do not need that much of linking devices there. Good. The final point. Now, how to be reportative, finally. How to tell a story in such a way that you are an expert analyzing both the story, the participants, and the reporter on the story, the author of the article. You can do that only if your subjects of the sentences are abstract nouns, reference nouns, or so these collective nouns. And second, if you use academic expressions. So instead of telling the story, retelling the story itself, try to say something like the report considers something that you introduce. The study, the research, or the author raises a problem of, or relates to, or draws attention to. Then you can continue this phrase with gerunds, with other nouns, with phrases, with clauses. Anything can be suitable there. So please look through this list of collocations and try to use them. So they're really useful academic expressions. Sometimes you can talk about the problem, issue, challenge, obstacle, or something, or pursuit, mission, goal of the article, and so on. And again, They come together with natural academic collocations. The only thing to remember, do not overuse passive voice. Passive voice is absolutely untypical for academic writing in English. So now it comes the time for practice. So please go on web, choose your own article, and try to make your own summary with these ideas and advice in mind. So hopefully this information was useful. See you on during the lesson, and looking forward to seeing your summaries.